growing up. Sometimes maybe if we experience or we exhibited some sort of, you know, crazy behavior or some, extreme behavior that, it was hard for our parents or our guardians to, you know, kind of, bring us in. Maybe they took us to someone that can help us with our behavior and ADHD and all of those things that we experience. But we really never, when we went to church, really heard the preacher or anybody in the church, say that, you could have a chemical imbalance, or maybe what happened to you at home. It's like, for us it was like, what happened in this house stays in this house.
Mhm.
And so we really didn't have that outlet. So I want to kind of open this question up. Being that experience, for us, Kyle, I want to hear from you. Do you think that, within this millennial age, that this is something that mental health is something that we need to present in the church? Is it something that we need to present in the church? And what is some ways that, we can present it in a way that people would actually be receptive of it?
Yeah, man. I'm all for it. I think a part of the problem has been a misdiagnosis for so long. You know, us in the church. I've 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 done a bit of studying in regard to the gaps between generations, and a lot of what the parents of the millennials, which are the baby boomers, or somewhat the Gen Xers, and even before that, you have the traditionalists, is that they were not privy to the information that we're privy to now.
Right.
So now that, especially over the last year and a half, almost 2 years, we've seen that the traditionalists are beginning to phase out within the church, and the millennials are coming to a place of where we are the dominant force in the global church.
Right.
With that being the case, because we have access to information that they didn't have access to, we can now bring things to the forefront that were never talked about before,
Right.
such as mental health and how that's applicable in every situation. You know what I mean? Who's to say that some of the ones that were diagnosed with ADHD weren't dealing with anxiety, weren't dealing with depression, weren't dealing with the various forms of mental health challenges? Being one, particularly that works in the field of developmental disabilities. I'm a teacher at a charter school, which that's what we're dealing with all day, every day, is people who have an entire spectrum, whether it be autism or whether it be oppositional defiance or whether it's emotional disturbance. These are all things that in the 70s and 80s in the church, that they would never speak about those things ever. That's not
Right.
something that was popular. That's not something that was attractive. Mental health for a long time wasn't attractive. Dealing with those things in ministry, in the black church, that was never a popular thing for black people to get together and genuinely care about mental health. I think that a lot of the falling out of the church might have been prohibited or avoided, rather, for lack of a better term, if we had dealt with the issues that were at the core or at the base of a lot of those who ended up leaving the church's heart. I think that one of the main ways for us to see fruit in this regard is to become educated in mental health, is to um, gather the resources, get outside of the four walls of the church,
Yes.
talk to counselors, talk to people that specialize in this field,
Yes.
and come to a place of, okay, I see that the system that I've been using up to this point has not been effective. I've
Yes.
not been able to to reach people or see deliverance or see healing the way that I want to see healing, or the way that I believe it should, even if it's not your direct desire, if it's something that you believe you should be seeing. We believe in the fullness of the power of God. We believe that literally anything is possible. Miracles are possible, healings are possible, deliverance is possible. If that's the case, that's something that we should desire to see. If we're not seeing that, there may be something that there may be something greater at hand that needs to be dealt with. There may be traumas that need to be dealt with, and we can't Ikana Mashaya out every single trauma. We can't. There are things that we within the church have taken on, and tried to. Please understand what I'm saying when I say this, but we've tried to Jesus away everything.
Oh, we got you. Yeah.
Without dealing with the source, without dealing with what's at the core of this issue. Because here's the thing, if they are clouded with anxiety, if they're clouded with depression, if they're clouded with diagnoses, they're not going to hear Jesus anyway. If they're hearing voices, they're not going to hear Jesus. So our responsibility within the church has to be to find the proper diagnoses, get educated on that topic, figure out how we can help this person out of their mental disability, and then moving them into a place of, okay, now that they're starting to see release, now we can fill the space that was once filled with whatever their mental capacity is. We can now take that and fill that space with the Jesus that they can receive. We can't expect for people to be able to receive the fullness of who Jesus is when they're clouded, when their capacity is already full of something else. So yeah, and that's
I'm convinced you and Marquez share a brain. I am convinced.
Wow.